Okay, our standard bed width in here is about 3 foot. And what we're going to do is we're going to put 3 rows of ranunculus in, approximately about at least 10 inches, but hopefully closer to about a foot apart. And then within the row itself, we're going to plant the ranunculus about 9 to 10 inch. Now, I'm not going to sit here and measure it specifically out, so we're just going to kind of eyeball it. And what we'll do is using a hoe like this. You can use any kind of triangular hoe. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make a furrow that goes along. I'm not going to go all the way down the length of the bed on this particular one. I'm just going to we're getting it down about 2 inches, thereabouts. And then we'll put now this looks like it's closer than it is, but usually by the time we get it planted and buried, these guys end up being at least 10 inches apart.
Why do we go 10 inches?
What we're trying to do is, we've done plantings before where we were really tight. We've done 6 by 6 and things like that. What I found is the closer I get the plants, I get more problems with airflow, more places for rot to get started, and I tend to have actually fewer stems because the plants tend to be a little more stressed. Although you can get taller stems, I don't tend to get as many off the plants as if I kind of push them apart. And I still think, realistically, even at 10 by 10 type spacing, that I'm probably still a little on the tight side. But I have to kind of balance that with, well, how much space do I have to grow what I need to grow in? So it's kind of been, for us, it's kind of been a balancing act of finding that spot where the plants do as good as they can, and I still are working with the constraints of the hoop house itself.
When we planted them tight, we had a bad issue with aphids.
That was the other thing. A stressed plant, also yields kind of, it just kind of cascades a bunch of problems.
Right. And last year, although we did it this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
About the same spacing.
Well, last year we were able to plant in plug trays, but we used the same spacing.
Same spacing.
Right.
And we had on particularly the amidine and the picotees. They were tall and big blossoms, and they just kept going and going no matter how many we picked. That's the first time I'd really had lots of blossom per plant.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Agree. And the other issue is, usually for us now, everybody's different because maybe you feel like you're using landscape fabric or something like that. We'll come through and we'll use a collinear hoe and just kind of scuff between the plants at least a couple of times. And you might see from the video, you can see it's like, whoa, he's pulling up some weeds that were in the thread stage. These weeds probably aren't going to get reestablished, but what I will be doing probably within a week or two, if it's that long, if I notice the weeds starting to grow again, I'm going to come in with a collinear hoe with like a 3-inch blade on it, and I can quickly, almost like sweep through the plants. So I can do this whole row in probably about 15 minutes. And
when we did the same thing last year, there were hardly any weeds.
Yeah. It's like once you knock down, if you get them at the thread stage, that's the key. Don't let them get past the thread stage.
There's only a little patch at the very back that had a little bit of grass.
Right. And it's just a matter of trying to get it, kind of knocked down before the canopy of the plants kind of closes in and makes it more difficult. So the sooner you get those fall weeds knocked down, if they start to germinate in your bed, life gets a lot easier.
We don't plant in any kind of landscape fabric or
No. I mean, we use landscape fabric on the farm. We use it for occultation purposes,
but not to
plant in for weed suppression. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, there's a lot of people that make it really work really well. But I think in the longer term, it's just another step of complexity.
Yeah.
You know, because at some point, you know, after you put it down and you go, okay, it's working great. You know, well, there was labor putting it down, there's labor picking it up. So it's kind of like, you know,
But there's labor in weeding too.
Yeah, there is, but it's
it just
probably a
doesn't
lot
seem
less.
To be as,
I mean, I'm going to come through and, you know.
It doesn't seem as much work
Right.
to do the hoeing versus the.
Well, the other thing too is landscape fabric with the burned holes works well, except right around the burned holes.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's where your plant is.
and lots of times what people end up with, depending on what the weed seed bank is on the area that you're planting in, you can get a lot of grasses or weeds that grow right up next to your plant, and then it's a hand weeding job.
Yeah.
And
that's backbreaking.
So I don't know. You know, I think it depends on your circumstances. If your weed seed bank is low and it's, you know, it's clean, looks good.
But see, that's why it's low in here, because it's never been tilled.
Yeah, we still get weeds.
We still get weeds, but it's a lot less than other places.
Right. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of it. We'll go all the way down and make these 3 furrows. And like I said, they're about 2 inches deep or so. The next step is we just go through and we line out the plants. So let's get them out of the mix and we can start putting them in the ground. Okay, I've got them all in and got them laid out for this color, and that's kind of what we're going to do for this video, because the rest of it's kind of, you know, rinse, lather, and repeat type process. But when you kind of come down and take a look at, you know, what you got going here is these guys are a pretty shallow plant, so you don't want to, like, you know, put them in really deep. So basically at this point, what I'm going to do is just go through the row and make sure I get them kind of covered up to the crown, patted down, make sure the roots are in the row. If I got any weeds, I'll pull them out at the same time, but most of these guys, just a matter of just kind of get them worked in. When I'm finished, the drip line will actually be running in between these 2 rows, so they'll water one side to the other. Right now I'm just kind of keeping it to the outside so it makes it a little easier to work. Fertilization of these guys is actually pretty low. What I will do a couple of times, probably 3 times, is I will apply a JMS and a grass liquid fertilizer to these guys, and I'll do it in a dilution with the JMS at a rate of 1 part JMS to 50 parts water. And for the fertilizer, I will use 1 part of the fertilizer to 200 parts of water. So what that means is if I'm looking at like a 3 gallons of diluted mix, I'm putting in probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4 tablespoons in 3 gallons for the fertilizer, and I'm putting in about I guess 16 tablespoons or so of the actual JMS, and that would be to 3 gallons of water, and that would be applied. Every 3 gallons could irrigate approximately about 10 feet of bed, and so it'd be a good soak. And we'll just kind of do that all the way down, and do that 3 times at a spacing of probably about 10 days apart, and then we'll just see how they'll go at that point. They should start to put out quite a few leaves in the next week or 2, and then when we get close to Thanksgiving, they'll probably slow down and not do much at all.
Irrigating it
is only as needed. So what I'm going to do is just got to make certain that they don't go dry, but the soil should have some moisture to it when you put your hand into it, but it should not be sopping wet. Do not over irrigate. That's really important. We're also going to keep the ends open of our hoop house to keep airflow going through. That's also important. Now, if it gets cold and we start moving into like freezing nights, then we'll bring out our agribonds, and that's what we use the hoop for here. And we just do that at night, so when it warms back up during the day, we pull the agribonds to the center of the hoops and let the airflow again come in. And
so it's a constant up and down, up and down.
It can be. Lots of times though, what we hope for is weather like we're just having right now, where it's just overcast and maybe it gets 55 during the day and maybe 45 at night, you know, and that's perfect. That's good growing weather for these guys.
Okay, so on the bulbs, we got these bulbs from Ball Hort.
Right, it was formerly Glockner,
we got them from Ball Hort Horticulture.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are purchased Amadine and Piketty and
they carry the Labelle series,
Amadines,
and
we don't grow any of the elegance. We have
we do grow elegant salmon.
Yeah,
we have grown that.
But we don't go into any of the fancier ones. We've grown them before, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're just getting really expensive, and so we're just opting for these varieties and growing them extremely well so that they get really big and healthy and just huge blooms.
Oh, and there is one thing. Once I go through and I get these guys all kind of healed in, I will come in with a good hose watering of it to kind of give it a good drench.
To make sure that they're actually
seeded
in and covered.
Yep. And like I said, if I come across any weeds or garbage, I'll just throw them out to the pathway and let them die out.
So we covered everything that folks have always asked, that where we got them, how the spacing, the watering, the fertilizing.
Fertilizing, again, we don't want to do too much of it. We just want to give them enough to kind of, give them an extra little boost.
If you over-fertilize,
you can end up with an aphid problem.
And you can end up with beautiful greens.
Yeah.
And not many blooms.
So one of the solutions that we do keep an eye out is we do keep an eye out for aphids. And we also kind of look at too is if we're not getting enough sunshine and the plants are looking kind of weak and leggy, we're going to tend to give them some, they could be green, but they could be floppy. We want them to kind of be a little more rigid. And what we'll do is we'll apply water-soluble calcium, putting about a teaspoon in a gallon of water, roughly, to give them a foliar feed of calcium.
And we usually don't net these.
No, we don't.
Because in the past few years, they grow so strongly, they don't need to be netted.
Right.
And it's just a hassle in cutting.
And then at the end of the season, once they're finished, we'll do an evaluation. But usually what we found by doing this method is that we have very little rot in the corms. And we will save corms, particularly for varieties that are we don't do anything that's plant patent protected. We try not to raise stuff like that anyway. And then we'll
do it again.
You do them again, but we'll also use those saved corms for a field planting to extend our harvest in the spring.
So yeah, we'll still be doing another spring box or two.
All right, those typically we plant near the end of January, first part of February.
And they will take where this may get hot and come to an end in April or May, first part of May. We can take the ones in the spring boxes and take them through June.
Yep. So anyway, that's our fall ranunculus chore.
This is just, we've been doing these ranunculus for what, 15 years?
Many, many years, yep.
And so there's not
it's a beautiful flower. We like growing them.
There's just not a whole lot different from year to year. We're just sharing more on the soil biology of it to encourage to have the best ranunculus that you can get.
Yep. So thanks for watching today, folks, and stay safe out there. Hope you have a great Halloween.
Woo!
Because this is coming out on Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Ow!
And we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Happy Halloween.